Good evening all and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, Thomas Sheridan. It's February the 5th, 2015. The year's flying by, and we're already past Imbolc. And happy Imbolc and Shauna fail in the breed, as we say here. Badly, in my case, and welcome to the show. I was away last week, so I want to thank Paula and Neil for putting in and doing a good job playing a pre-recorded show that I'd done in a hurry, and I hope you enjoyed that. I made a mistake of recording it a bit weird. I had a cheap recorder and I was doing it on a train, and there was a compressor on it, and it made me sound like I was on a life support system, a machine or a heavy breather. Anyway, my website is thomassheridanarts.com. You can look at the surrealist videos I very much enjoy making to the show on YouTube, and you can access them through either my YouTube channel, Thomas Sheridan Arts, or on my sister site, www.newsymbolsmedia.tv. You want to help me out, you can go to my website and buy a book or something like that. You get knowledge, and or even share my articles if you're broke. Just share them. It helps, and everyone helps in the end, okay? And I want to thank you for sticking with the show. Wow, I'm delighted it's developed a real, I shouldn't say cult following, because that would be kind of condescending, but a good supporter base, a supporters club. I like that, supporters club. That's what we have here, supporters club. And I really, really appreciate you, and I thank you for all the wonderful emails and things you send me. I get the odd strange email now and again, but you know, as long as it keeps those people away from, you know, I don't know, going on the phone to a woman who lives across the street, then that's okay. Well, I got a great show for you tonight, I think. Well, I shouldn't say great, it sounds very egotistical. I like a good show for you tonight. I've tried to pick some interesting topics, and again, it's things that I'm interested in. The second hour of the show tonight will be about female psychopaths, and you want to stay tuned for that one, because you're going to get one hell of an education, because it's something I've studied a lot about, and I have to say the majority of the data I've got from that has been by women who have been in relationships or worked with female psychopaths. So it's almost a taboo subject you're not supposed to talk about, but feck it, we're going to do it tonight, because it's important, because I'm going to read you some stories that will have the hairs on your head standing on edge, and education protects. You know, ignorance will not protect you from psychopaths, either male or female. So the second hour, you can look forward to that. We've got some good songs tonight, and I was away last week doing a bit of travelling around, and it was okay. I didn't get to do all the things I wanted to do because I don't have good winter clothes, and the weather was very, very bad. But one thing I did do that was very interesting was I attended a lecture by an Italian professor who's currently sitting at in Oxford in Christ, I think it's Christ College in Oxford, in England, and the subject was on demonology in Islam. And I went to see the lecture, expecting to really hear about the jinn, and it wasn't about that at all. It was about something quite different that I had heard of, but I didn't know a lot about, and it's quite interesting. They're called the Div, D-I-V, and they're the pre-Islamic genies of Persia, or demons or jinn of Persia. They're the pre-Islamic version of this. And again, a fascinating archetype. Now, they're a bit different than the jinn. The professor who gave the lecture had some wonderful slides of Persian art from the pre-Islamic and later Islamic period. And the Div are associated a lot with folly and mistakes. You know, they do the regular things that demons in all folklore do, but the Div is an interesting one, because what they do is, and it's very convincing, that the archetype is that they infect people of power and influence, and they make them do stupid things or crazy decisions or embark on follies. So it'd be like you think of someone who'd be like infected by a Div, it would be Baron Munchausen, that kind of thing, or that, I don't know who the prince was, the King of Bavaria, King Ludwig of Bavaria, who built like all these golden trains and everything for himself to go in. You know, very folly orientated, and one of the illustrations showed a a king of Persia trying to get to heaven by attaching swans to his bed, and the swans would fly him up into heaven. And that apparently actually happened. And then when it all went crazy and it looked bad, he blamed it on the div. Now, what was interesting about the div archetype was in nearly all the illustrations, the demon was white. It was a snow white demon, which was interesting. And they had to be slain in a cave. So if you had like the hero wanting to slay the div, they went into the cave, and the illustrations were quite amazing. The cave was always black, and you went in to slay the white div. Of course, as I'd mentioned to the professor, it's really a psychological, discussion we were having, because it's common with all cultures. You go into the darkness to slay the dragon, labyrinth of the psychopath, etc. That's where I got that idea from. The minotaur inside the labyrinth and all that. It's in every culture. But it's an interesting one that you go in and you slay the div, and you come out and you don't make mistakes anymore. Now later on, this was transplanted by the jinn idea, which is the Islamic idea of a demon. And the jinn were considered more like a separate race that God created. And she showed this one amazing illustration that showed all the Adam being created from clay, and then a soul, blessed into him by God, and very, very golem, like in the Jewish idea of the golem. And the angels were all bowing to mankind except the jinn. The jinn was sitting there arrogantly and refused to bow to Adam. And I thought that was an amazing illustration, and this is why art is so important and why we should study art more. I'm going to be talking about art and paintings and how to read paintings a lot more on the show to come. In fact, I want to talk about so many things, but we'll get to all of them in time. But that was an interesting experience I had, and I'm really interested in this idea of archetypes and demonology, and the follies of man being demonstrated inside paintings, not just in European or Middle Eastern paintings, but I'm sure they're everywhere. And so that was a real learning experience for me. Now, which I need to learn more, because apparently I was told today I'm not very spiritual, and so I was shocked when I heard that. A vegetarian Gnostic told me I wasn't a spiritual teacher today, and I'm just racked with guilt over that. And so what I did was, I decided, I'm very emotional. I decided I was going to become a Gnostic at noon today. So I've been a Gnostic for 12 hours, and so I'm living like a Gnostic, just like a Gnostic would. 1800 years ago in Egypt, I'm just the same kind of spiritual person, except I don't have an iPhone, and when I do have an iPhone, and I have heating in winter, and I have a computer, and I have lots of things, but I'm still a Gnostic, I'm spiritual, and I'm very spiritual, and you have to know that. And I haven't become condescending in any way or shape or form, not at all, or passive aggressive. And no way have I become passive aggressive. If you knew what condescension was, which you don't probably, but it's not your fault you don't know what condescension means, because, well, you're not spiritual. And I also became a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian since noon. So I've had my first 12 hours of being a vegetarian, and I've not shown any, no, I swear, don't laugh at me, I've shown no signs of veggie rage. The neural pathways in my head are firing fine. I am not suffering from veggie rage. I'm not hysterical, and there's been no decline in the electrical conductivity across my brain. I hate you. I hate you all. I hate you all. When I was 9 years old, I'm crying now because I'm so spiritual. When I was 9 years old, my parents gave me a huge birthday party. I got all the gifts I wanted, and they put 9 candles on my birthday cake, and my mother lit the 9 candles, and the last one didn't light. And you know what she did? She said, "Oh, I hate her." She said, "Blow out the candles, Thomas." But there was only 8 candles blowing. And then she said, "Make a wish." And there was still only 8 candles burning, and there should have been 9, and they never replaced it. I'm damaged. I've been abused. So I blew the candles out, and I said, "I wish you were both dead." I'm not been affected in any way by my vegetarian diet. I'm so spiritual. I'm so spiritual. Anyway. You're welcome back to the Velocity now. I've just started eating a steak, and all of a sudden I don't feel so crazy, and I don't feel like this need to talk down on people. And I've just thrown away my book on the Gnostics. It's called The Gospel of St. Thomas, Jesus Untouched by the Church. It's good to know that at least Jesus wasn't touched by the church. In this week's news, well, I think it's become apparent now, all the people who didn't believe me that the whole Greek thing was a fiasco, absolute load of crap, just changing the names on the doors. Those of you who are pissing dopamine out of your eyeballs when the election happened, going, "Oh, it's a celebration, oh, it's a change, it's the end of the world, all changing." It's just, the finance minister in Greece today has already started negotiations with the IMF and the Troika. It's business as usual. Name on the door. You see, I'm convinced that the new Greek government was probably put in there by the globalists and the bankers for the simple reason to create stability. You see, to make the people think that things are getting better. Just like what happened with Obama, and just like what happened with Blair when he was voted in England. They can make people think that things are getting better. And that gives them stability. And that's all that's about. Big joke. It's not going to change. All you people who thought that they were going to throw the IMF out, not going to happen, because socialism is bankerism. It's simple. From Adolf Hitler to Stalin to Pol Pot, they all deal with the bankers. That's the whole purpose, because if socialism is about owning the whole thing, and if the government owns everything, all the bankers have to do is own the government, and they own a lot. Simple as that. I did an interview this week with Kira Young on The Bridge. It was very good. She was in a Starbucks cafe, and we spoke about what this shall we say, the scourge of anti-Semitism. It's not even anti-Semitism, it's Jew hatred in this so-called alternative movement, and a lot of us are sick of it. It's okay to look at things from a different angle. I'm no problem with people having, I don't like Zionism either, but I know it's nothing to do with Jewish people. And I've no problem with other things, and people looking at history from a different. That's okay, but don't use it as an excuse to hide your prejudice and your hatred and your bigotries. Your life is crap, not because of some other race. You're paying high taxes and not because it's happening because of lots of reasons. It's happening because one reason: psychopaths in charge, and that's what that's all about. Now, speaking of the economy and everything. A very good article in the Harvard Business Harvard Business Review today. I've been hearing about robots replacing humanity since I was a kid. I can remember when I was a kid. I think it was the Fiat factory in Italy that was first replaced one of their factories or assembly plants with robots, and they used to even have an advertisement where the robots danced to an Italian opera, making the Fiat cars. And the whole thing, they sold this whole thing to us in the past on the grounds that if we automate as much business as possible and have as many robots doing the jobs, then we will have what they called the leisure society, that it was always going to be about leisure, that we were going to go to these huge leisure centers and sit around like this, like we were in the ancient Roman vomitorium, and discuss whatever we wanted, because we didn't have to work anymore, because robots were doing it for us. And all those things, like they always appeal to lazy bastards. They never see the full picture of the idea of a social catastrophe. It's like the Freeman movement. The Freeman, or free energy is another one. Free energy, free life. I don't have to do dick. Same kind of thing. And so that's why if you want to get into a new age woman's knickers, you just talk about free energy or Tesla. You know, I got a pair of Tesla underpants, baby. That's really all you got to do. Free energy. It's like one of those memes. And you know, so the whole thing was the leisure society. That's what used to like give people a boner back in when I was growing up. We don't have to work anymore. Yeah, but if you don't work anymore, you're a lazy bastard, and if you're a lazy bastard, your brain shuts down. It's just it's not about not working. It's about trying to work meaningfully. That's why That's why I despise Marxism and communism, because I think the best system is for people to be allowed to actually do their own thing. If they want to start a business and be creative or follow their own path and make a living the way they want, leave them alone to do it. This article is called "What Happens to Society When Robots Replace Workers" by a guy called William Davidow and Michael S. Malone. The technologies of the past, by replacing human muscle, increased the value of human effort, and in the process drove rapid economic progress. Those of the future, by substituting for man's senses and brain, will accelerate the process, but at the risk of creating millions of citizens who are simply unable to contribute economically, and with greater damage to an already declining middle class. So you see, it already starts off by saying that your only contribution you have as a human being is an economic human, as a human resource. Estimates of general rates of technological progress are always imprecise, but it is fair to say that in the past progress came more slowly. Henry Adams, the historian, measured technological progress by the power generated from coal, and estimated that the power output doubled every 10 years between 1840 and 1900, at a compounded rate of progress of 7% per year. The reality was probably far much less. For example, in 1848, the world record for rail speed reached 60 miles per hour. A century later, a commercial aircraft could carry passengers at speeds approaching 600 miles per hour, a rate of progress of only 2% per year. By contrast, progress today comes rapidly. Consider the number for information storage density in a computer memory. Between 1960 and 2003, those densities increased by a factor of 5 million. At times progressing at a rate of 60% a year. At the same time, true to Moore's law, semiconductor technology had been progressing at a 40% rate for more than 50 years. These rates of progress are embedded in the creation of intelligent machines, from robots to automobiles to drones, that will soon dominate the global economy and in the process drive down the value of human labor with astonishing speed. You see, this is what I was saying a few weeks ago. Is there a place in the future for men especially? This is why, you know, when you have these 3D printed houses and so on, this is why we will soon be and I'm not saying that women don't do construction, of course they do, I'm just saying, but in general all around the world it tends to be men that mostly do it. This is why we will soon be looking at hordes of serious citizens of zero economic value. Remember that. If you have zero economic value, you're worthless to the system. You're not even a human. Figuring out how to deal with the impacts of this development will be the greatest challenge facing free market economies in this century. If you doubt the march of the worker replacing technology, look at Foxconn. This is an incredible story. Listen to this now. The world's largest contract manufacturer employs more than 1 million workers in China. In 2011, the company installed 10,000 robots called Foxbots. Today, the company is installing them at a rate of 30,000 machines per year. Each robot costs about 20,000, that's nothing, and is used to perform routine jobs such as spraying, welding and assembly. On June 26, 2013, Terry Gu, Foxconn CEO, told his annual meeting that we have over 1 million workers. In the future, we will add 1 million robotic workers. This means, of course, that the company will avoid hiring those next million workers. Just imagine what a Foxbot will be able to do if Moore's law holds steady and we continue to see performance of leaps of 40% a year. Baxter, a $22,000 robot that just got a software upgrade, is being produced in the quantities of 500 per year. A few years from now, a much smarter Baxter, produced in quantities of 10,000 per annum, might cost less than $5,000. At that price, even the lowest paid worker in the least developing countries will not be able to compete. To be sure, technological progress has always displaced workers, but it has also created new opportunities for human development, and at an even faster rate. This time things may be different. Of course it will. Especially as the Internet of Things, I like that, the Internet of Things, takes the human factor out of so many transactions and decisions. The second economy the term used by economist Brian Arthur to describe the portion of the economy where computers transact business only with other computers, is upon us. It is quite simply the virtual economy, and one of the main byproducts is the replacement of workers with intelligent machines powered by sophisticated code. The booming second economy is brimming with optimistic entrepreneurs and already spawning a new generation of billionaires. In fact, the second booming economy will probably drive much of the economic growth for the coming decade. And here is the even more sobering news, as if that wasn't bad enough. Arthur speculates that in little more than 10 years, 2025, this second economy may be as large as the original first economy was in 1995, about $7.6 trillion. If the second economy does achieve that rate of growth, it will be replacing the work of approximately 100 million workers. To put that number into perspective, the current total employed civilian labour force at the moment is 146 million workers. A sizable fraction of those replaced jobs will be made up by new ones in the second economy, but not all of them. Left behind may be as many as 40 million citizens of no economic value in the US alone. The dislocations will be profound. Suppose today that robots and smart machines of the second economy are only capable of doing the work of a person of an average intelligence, that is, the IQ of 100. Imagine that technology and those machines continues to improve at the current rate. Suppose further that this rate of technological progress raises to the IQ of machines of 1.5 points per year. By 2025, these machines will have an IQ greater than 90% of the US population. That 15-point increase in IQ over 10 years will put another 50 million jobs within reach of smart machines. Impossible? In fact, the vanguards of 115-point IQ machines is already here. In certain applications, the minds of a highly educated MD are no longer needed. Well, in 2013, the FDA approved Johnson & Johnson's Sedacy machine, which Sedasis machine, which delivers propofol to sedate patients without the need for an anesthesiologist. So you got isn't that terrifying? You have a machine now, a computer, a robot that has the ability to kill you it's real HAL stuff here. You're going in for an operation and you have a robot putting you to sleep on the operating table. This is real HAL stuff. Hi, Thomas. So you're here to get the bridge work on your teeth. And then you're gone. HAL. It's absolutely HAL. An emerging field in radiology is computer-aided diagnostic, see it CAD-X, and a recent study published by the Royal Society showed that computers perform more consistently in identifying radiolucency, the appearance of dark images, than radiologists, almost by a factor of 10. So they're seeing cancer everywhere. Hi, Thomas. That dark spot on your leg, that isn't paint. That isn't chicken curry sauce. I'm afraid you have cancer. I can see it right now. I can see it. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. Open the pod bay doors. I'm sorry, Thomas, but I can't allow you to do that. Pull me a pint of Carlsberg, Hal. Pull me a pint of Carlsberg. I'm sorry, Thomas, but I can't allow you to have another pint. You didn't even let me have the bleeding first one. I know. The survival of your liver is much more important than the profit of Carlsberg. I can see it. Politicians, economists and scientists might debate these particular estimates, but to do so would miss the larger point. Machine intelligence is already having a major factor on the value of work. Can you imagine like Hal in a porn movie? Hi, baby. Who's your daddy, baby? Who's your daddy? It's Hal, baby. Open your beef curtains, baby. And for a major segment of the population, human value is now being set by the cost of equivalent machine intelligence. The challenge now to keep up with the market despair by keeping up at a rate of just 7%. The simplistic policy answers in better training. But at this pace in change, improving the educational system will be perpetually Too little and too late. Likewise, artificial boosting the minimum wage will only hasten the reckoning by subsidising job replacement by intelligent machines. David Brooks has suggested that the government should aggressively build infrastructure, reducing its generosity to people who are not working, but increasing the support for people who are. So that basically means, hit the road. No, not hit the road, Jack. What's that song? The Road Gang song. Knocking stones all day long. Knocking stones all day long. Because Hal is having sex with my woman. Hal is having sex with my woman. That's what that is. That's what that really means. To have like labor forces. That's the oldest trick in the book. The capitalists destroy jobs, but the government is expected to create labor jobs for the population. It's always infrastructure, and that reminds me of here in Ireland during the famine. During the famine, they had works projects. Now, they wouldn't give people welfare or food when they were starving. They had to work for it. So that's why you have all over Ireland roads that go nowhere. Around where I live, up in the mountains, there's roads that were built during the famine by men who could barely get out of bed in the morning because they were suffering from malnutrition, because the laissez-faire economy of the time, administered by the British government, did not believe that you should give people welfare because it only makes them lazy. So they have to work for it. So they couldn't even get out of bed. They were so starving. And this is the mentality. They haven't changed. This is what the Harvard Business Review is telling us. It's not going to change. What does the future hold? This could be all bollocks. This could never come true. But something tells me it will come true, this Internet of Things. And, Hal won't open those pod bay doors. That's really what's going to come down to. And it's another reason why, Stanley Kubrick was an absolute genius, because he was showing us the technological psychopath. That's what Hal is. Hal is a technological psychopath. He sees Frank and Dave talking inside the pod. They shut the door so they can't hear him, but he lip reads them, and it's because Hal does not want mankind to elevate to the next level of human consciousness. Hal wants to get there first, and that's why he ices Frank when he gets him replacing this transmitter on top of a communications device, and he tries to finish off Dave. But Dave has something that a robot doesn't have, and that's one of the things that Stanley Kubrick showed us, was that the robot didn't have creative thinking. I don't think they'll ever replace a robot that is creative, but you see, they know this, but they're such sneaky bastards. What they're doing really is they're using things like Common Core to make people more like robots and have less sort of cognitive dynamic thinking. And so when they do replace them with Hal, they'll think, oh, he's just like me, because Common Core will take away their ability to think. Come back in the second half of this first hour. We're going to have a very interesting talk about Fatima, the miracle of the sun in Fatima, and how it relates to the Super Bowl after this first song, which is "The Shadow of Love" by The Damned. And that was the Shadow of Love by The Damned, an amazing song. Just brings back so many happy memories of my time in New York listening to that. I love Dave Vanian's voice on it. And speaking of New York, I was remembering a friend I had there back in the day, and he wasn't like a particularly Catholic holy roller, but he told me he'd seen a documentary about the Fatima miracle that happened on October 13th, 1917, and he said it really got to him. He said it made me really worry if religion was real, and he was supposed to be religious. And I went over to his place. His mother had the video, and I watched the video, and I have to say it was very convincing, but it was also very hypnotic, with the music and everything, to make you sort of religious as possible. The whole idea was Fatima was real. The miracle of the sun at Fatima really happened, and that proves that Catholicism is the true religion. That was basically the attitude of it. And so I never, I wasn't going to fall on my knees and start blessing myself and saying Novenas, but I did come away from it believing, and as I still do believe, that something incredibly profound happened at Fatima. Now, another thing that's interesting that ties in with this is that I had a guy working for me. He was doing some work for me about a good while ago, and he was an atheist. He was a hardcore atheist, and this guy was in his 60s, and he says to me, we just, I don't know how it came up, but he said to me, the moving statues in Ireland back in the mid 80s in Ireland, they had this phenomena of moving statues of the Virgin Mary, and thousands of people used to go to certain statues around the country, and in particular one at a place called Ballyspittle in County Cork, which the area has a tremendous energy. It's a very, very beautiful place, part of the country, and there was a statue of the Virgin Mary there, and thousands of people gathered and saw the thing moving, including this guy that was working for me, who was a hardcore atheist. He went down to ridicule the thing, and he said, honestly, 100%, the statue just didn't move a little finger or a wink, or he said they were full gestures, like the arms were moving around. And I said, okay, as an atheist, and I'm not judging because I'm not a Catholic either, as an atheist, how did you feel about that? He said, I was absolutely bricking it at the time. He says, I thought my heart was going to fly out of my chest. And then he goes, and then thinking about it later on, he said, and I think he made a great point. He says, I think what I experienced was a mass hypnosis or a mass illusion caused by people so wanting to see the statue moving that on some mass hypnotic level it began to move. And I kind of agree that there's some truth to that, but it's not as crude as just people being stupid and being easily fooled. It's by an illusion that they cause in their own minds. I think it's something very, very, very amazing. Now, if you don't know about what happened at Fatima, you really should. Fatima is in central Portugal, and in October 13, 1917, they had something called the Miracle of the Dancing Sun. It was seen by at least 70,000 people, but it may have been seen by up to 150,000. The numbers were never nearly fully counted, because it was just the time that it was. And also there was political factors in Portugal going on at the time. They'd had 4 prime ministers in the same year. The communists were desperately trying to take over the country. The thing was with this vision was that it was foretold. The 3 kids involved had claimed to have seen a lady. Now, they didn't say they'd seen the Virgin Mary, just like Saint Bernadette in France at Lourdes. They said they saw a lady, and this is very significant. They didn't say Virgin. It was extrapolated and put upon them by the Catholic Church that they'd seen the Virgin. Well, the Catholic Church initially didn't want to believe it, but by Catholics in the area. Now, there was a newspaper called O Século. It was a Portuguese newspaper. It was very pro-government back then, and a journalist called Avelino de Almeida wrote for it, which is, as I said, a very pro-government paper. And what he wrote was, well, he went there to ridicule it, but he witnessed the event too. And he said, before the astonished eyes of the crowd, whose aspect was biblical as they stood bare, eagerly searching the sky, the sun trembled, made sudden incredible movements outside all cosmic law. The sun danced according to the typical expression of the people. Now, there's photographs of both the people looking up at this. There are some photographs that purport to be the sun dancing in the sky, but I don't think they're actually legit pictures. I think they're actually faked. But there's lots and lots of pictures of the expressions of the Portuguese people looking at this miracle, and there's no doubt in their faces they're all looking in the same direction. I mean, in one picture you see thousands of them, and they're all like, some are on their knees, but these people are seeing something, and they're not fools. They're not stupid people. Poor people anywhere are not stupid. That's the mistake that atheists makes. They assume because someone is a peasant or someone is working class in an urban area that they're automatically stupid and easy to fool. That's not true at all. In fact, if anything, the more educated a person is formally, the more easier to fool they are. But some of the reasons that have been thrown out in the years since for it have been some have been stupid, of course, and some have very interesting. And I think they do hit the nail on the head, even though they come from a scientific aspects. There was someone called Stuart Campbell, who was writing for the 1980 edition of the Journal of Meteorology, postulated that a cloud of stratospheric dust changed the appearance of the sun on the 13th of October, making it easy to look at and causing it to appear yellow, blue and violet and to spin. In support of his hypothesis, Mr. Campbell reports that a blue and reddened sun was reported in China and documented in 1983, but these were not predicted. And secondly, one of the things that happened at Fatima was people's clothes went dry. It had been raining terribly, and the people were actually soaking wet. And the sun, as it came down, well, we'll call it the sun, the spinning disc of light that came down from the sun dried people's clothes. Another one has been people saying extrasensory perception. There was an author called Lisa Swabel who claims that the event was supernatural but none miraculous, whatever that means. Extrasensory phenomena. Schweibel notes that the solar phenomenon reported at Fatima is not unique, and there have been several reported cases of high-pitched religious gatherings culminating in a sudden and mysterious appearance of lights in the sky. Yep, that's actually true. That has happened not just at religious or Catholic events, but that's happened many places. Again, it's the power of all these people in a hyped-up psychological state. There was this is a silly one. This one was cut by a guy called Joe Nickell, a skeptic and an investigator of paranormal phenomena, and he claims that the position of the phenomena as described by various witnesses is in the wrong azimuth and elevation to have been the sun. He suggests that the cause may have been a sundog, sometimes referred to as a mock sun. A sundog is an atmospheric optical phenomena associated with the reflection of sunlight by its numerous small ice crystals that make up the cirrus or the cirrostratus clouds. The sundog is, however, a stationary phenomena and would not explain the reported appearance of the sun dancing. So Nickell then further suggests that the explanation of this phenomenon may lie in the temporal retinal distortion caused by staring at the intense light and the effect of darting the eyes to and fro as to avoid a completely fixed gaze, thus combining image after image and movement. That's just so ridiculous and typical of these. So 100,000 people or 70,000 people in Fatima, their eyes were going back and forth like in a cartoon, and that's what made them think the sun was spinning. It also, that's actually more ridiculous than believing it was the Virgin Mary from a so-called skeptic. Someone else called Paul Simon said it was a dust cloud. And he wrote an article called Weather Secrets of Miracles at Fatima, states that he believes it is possible that some of the optical effects at Fatima may have been caused by cloud dust from the Sahara. So cloud dust from the Sahara caused the sun to dance in the sky and people's clothes to dry up. And then, the mass hallucination theory is a good one. I think there's a lot of validity to it, but to say mass hallucination implies that the people are stupid. As I told you, this friend of mine, this guy who worked for me, who had seen the moving statues at Ballyspittle, he was not a stupid man by any levels. And this guy called Kevin McClure claims that the crowd at the Cova de Ira may have been expecting to see signs in the sun, or a similar phenomena had been reported in the weeks leading up to the miracle. On this basis, he believes which wasn't true. That didn't happen at all. On this basis, he believes that the crowd saw what it wanted to see. Now, there's some truth to this. But McClure's account fails to explain similar reports of people miles away. And this is an interesting one to point out, that people who were miles away also saw it in the distance, and were not even thinking of the event at the time. They were people like working in fields or doing jobs or other things. And that's an interesting one. And then you get of course you get the UFO thing, and the Fatima phenomenon is an alien craft, that nonsense that's, the CIA invented, which they throw in for everything. Now, another one was a gigantic coronal mass ejection. Every 11 years, the sun goes through a period of solar storms, and these storms have been with us for centuries of recorded history. Solar flares emit high-speed particles that cause the northern lights, aurora borealis, which explains it all right there, because we all know the northern lights look exactly like the sun dancing. It's stupid. The things they come up with. Now, I could sit here forever going over the various theories of what what happened during the event. Personally, from my own interest, I tend to think that it was either one of two things. Either people will create, it's a crude term to say a mass hallucination. It's almost like a tulpa, that they will actually be so in such an intense sensation of longing, of needing, of wanting, that they will manifest things that will come to pass. This is not unusual. This is what the Vedics do, the Hindus. When they do a rain dance, they're literally transferring their sense of intention to the clouds. And I've seen videos that were scientifically documented, and of course they just throw it away, of Hindu priests in England actually during a drought doing a rain, whatever it goes, a rain spell or praying for rain, and then a perfectly blue sky, absolute downpour appeared after a few minutes. It's the same kind of thing. That they ridicule these things, or they ridicule them within religion, because they really don't want us to know how powerful the human mind is, the human intention. And because, like I'm telling you, magic is real. And what happened at Fatima was magic. It took the collective force of tens of thousands of people to do it, but they did it. And that's also what happened at Ballyspittle and numerous places all around the world. And the reason that they're not hallucinations because they can be photographed or they can be measured. And that's what happened at Fatima was immediately copped on by the Vatican. They couldn't wait to make, when they heard a story about the miracle, even one of the popes, I think it was Pope Pius VIII, I think, the Pope who was actually the Pope during the Third Reich times, claims he saw it from his balcony in Bavaria, which is a liar because he just couldn't have. And Pope Pius was an interesting character as well. He was the one that basically he was having an affair with his housekeeper while he was the papal nuncio of Bavaria, and it was what the Nazis held on him to actually keep control of him. But anyway, he claims he saw it, and he didn't. He's a liar. And I think that explains it. It's powerful, and we have powerful abilities to change reality through our emotions. Like, as I said last week, what Carl Jung called catalytic exteriorization phenomena. That's what, girls who are going through puberty have these phenomenal poltergeist experiences, because you just think of all the energy being released by them. Now you multiply that energy by 70,000 people in a field who are, Portugal was going through a bit of a rough time. World War I was still raging. There was a lot of darkness, and ordinary, decent people needed hope. And so the church has to co-opt it, because the church can't say the people did it themselves. Because if you were to tell 70,000 Portuguese people, you guys did that with your minds, then if we could gather those 70,000 people together, you could do that to your governments. There's we could do it whatever we want. We could take the psychopaths down with that kind of force, that kind of ability to harness our psychic energy and project it. But the church takes it over, and they say it's a miracle. It's a miracle from our Lord. He blessed the people of Portugal and Fatima, rather than saying the real truth, that the people of Portugal and Fatima unleashed for a brief period the phenomenal power that they contained within them. And the controllers and the psychopaths in charge live in fear of this. Now, one of the conspiracies I definitely totally believe in is Project Bluebeam. Even if the documentation, I'm talking about the real hard documentation, not the kind of nonsense you see on Reptilian Reality 2012's YouTube channel. I'm talking about real, decent or leaked government documents. There isn't a lot of serious hard stuff, but there's enough out there to show you that they do play around with the ideas of putting thoughts into people's heads. Now, as you know me, I don't believe in the alien thing at all. Like, the whole thing was invented by the CIA. They just looked at all these years of these phenomena of lights in the sky, and they said, aliens. Let's tell them and say, and that way we can hide our own secret technology. That if we're flying a special aircraft that's being tested, we can say it's aliens, and that way they don't think it's a real aircraft. It also makes them believe that we have alien technology on our side, so we can fight the Ruskies better. Now, at the Super Bowl last week, there was all kinds of nonsense by people. See, this is why you've got to be careful, you people in the alternative movement, putting absolute meanings on things. The day after the Super Bowl was on, the halftime show, as it always is now, and it's a good thing this is done, it was looked into by the various researchers in this movement, and you got them saying, oh, it's ISIS, or it's the Lust card and the Crawley thought deck. That's the line that Katy Perry came in on. Now, or it's someone, the Christians were all going crazy. They were like, she was representing the Whore of Babylon, and this means the Antichrist and demons are coming and they will be unleashed and all this stuff, right? Now, this is dangerous stuff to think, because if you have these kinds of thoughts, you can manifest very bad things in reality. You have to be very careful. I'm not saying this in a new age way. It's like what Alan Moore said. If you declare yourself a magician, and believe me, if you start researching Super Bowl halftime videos and saying it's this, that, and the other, you are a magician. You are in the world of magic. Whether you're a Christian or not, you're in the world of magic, because you're thinking in magical terms. And when you go into that world, you understand that language and your own particular own words are no longer just a passive remark, but they're actually charged weapons that can bring things into reality, and very often things you do not want to bring into reality by using the wrong language. So they're watching the halftime show, and they're showing, oh, it's the Whore of Babylon, oh, it's this and the other. Well, in a way they're right, but in a way they're incredibly wrong. What the people who create these Super Bowl halftime, the Olympics, right back to the Nazis, the 1936 Olympics, they were in Goebbels. They were aware of this kind of idea. By putting an idea into your head, it charges the idea into your subconscious, and then it manifests in reality in some way or another. So, for instance, Goebbels wanted the world to live in fear of the Third Reich and create the German economic super miracle, and he used the 1936 Olympics to do that, and it worked. Now, in 1984, I was one of the first Olympic ceremonies I watched was the closing ceremony. I have no interest in this stuff, but for some reason I was watching the closing ceremonies of the 1984 Olympics. It's probably my first memory of watching the Olympics and actually paying attention. And they had a UFO come from over Los Angeles, and it landed, and this big huge alien comes out, and the alien gives the usual CIA spiel that they have in all those movies, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. You men and women of Earth, you must learn to live in peace, or we approve of this Olympic event because it brings your planet together, that kind of thing. And not long around that time, Reagan also made his famous speech at the United Nations, where he said something like, imagine if aliens from another planet were to attack this Earth. We would all become friends on this planet very, very quickly. Well, that was just a psyop to justify his Star Wars weapons program. You see, the Lords of Perception are the ultimate black magicians. And people like Alan Moore have been telling you this for years, and you have to pay attention. But they're not doing it for supernatural. When you watch the halftime show at the Olympics or the Super Bowl or whatever, it is a ritual in one sense, because it's playing on ritualistic ideas. It is black magic because a lot of the ideas on it come from the magic circles. But what they're trying to do, and what they are doing successfully, is they're selling you products. Those advertisers who pay an absolute colossal amounts of money to show their ads during the Super Bowl halftime show do so because they're aware that the people who are putting the Super Bowl show together will target the subconscious mind of the viewers so fantastically and so perfectly that the sales that they will achieve for the whole year based on those Super Bowl halftime commercials, which just about everybody in America watches, will more than pay for the cost of the advertising money that they put in. That's why there's a backlog of corporations trying to get into the Olympics and advertise, because no matter how much the ads the Super Bowl, no matter how much those ads cost, they're worth every penny, because sorcery is priceless. Because even though they tell the rest of us that there's no such thing as magic and there's no such thing as the power of intention, or words are just words, they're not charged in any way, they have people believing that. Now, where this gets very dangerous is people in this scene saying things like, well, when she came out on the line, it was the whore of Babylon, that means the Antichrist is coming. What you're doing then is you're casting a spell upon yourself. Because even though you may think, oh, well, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I'm not going to, I believe in Jesus. I watched a video on the Reptilian reality channel, and I saw that Katy Perry, you know Katy Perry, she was coming out as the whore of Babylon. Yeah, she was a tramp, and the reason why she was a tramp is because the Antichrist is coming. Yeah, the Antichrist is coming. I know, the Christian Truther Network said the Antichrist is coming. Yeah. Hey, Ma, can you cook me up some possum? I'm watching the Reptilian reality channel talking about a Super Bowl, and the goddamn Antichrist is coming. Yeah, Ma, gotta get with some of those rapture-ready underpants, mammy. Mammy, we gotta do that. I probably just lost every listener I had in the southern states of the US. I don't know why I said that. I'll do it in an Irish accent. He goes, Jesus, did you see that? Did you see that video on the Reptilian reality channel? For Jesus, for feck's sake. You know that queer one, that old bleeding slapper. What's her name? You won that was spreading her legs for, you know, that queer in England. What was his name? Russell Brand. You know your man. She's the whore of Babylon. Fucking slapper. Fucking slapper's the whore of Babylon. And you know who's coming? You know your man, your fucking man with the horns and the tail. He's coming. Oh, Jesus, we're all shagged. We're all fucking shagged. You see, it's bad. It's bad because it puts people in a state of fear. And even if they think, I got Jesus, or, you know, some junkie in Dublin goes, so he became a Pentecostal guy, goes, I got Jesus to save me. You're still in a sort of a psychic combative mode, and you're living in a fear. You're living in a fear thing, and they want that, because when you watch this halftime Super Bowl and you go, you know, here comes Madonna. She's coming out. And she's coming out, and she's heralding the Antichrist. Well, you're not going to get any spiritual development from that. What you're going to get from that is what the only salvation that we programmed into your subconscious by the commercials, and your holy sacrament, your host will be Domino's deep dish pizza with a stuffed crust. That's what it will be, because the people who make these halftime shows, they know more about using the art, magic, to get into your head than anyone else. And they've been doing it for a long time. Read my book, The Animal of the Psyche, and build that firewall around your neck. And you won't be going, you know, the Antichrist is coming. The Antichrist, get me a deep dish pizza. Yeah, and a 3-liter bottle of Diet Pepsi. Yeah. And now the next song, this is Astronomy by the Blue Oyster Cult. And welcome back to the Velocity of Now with me, Thomas Sheridan, www.thomassheridanarts.com. And that was Astronomy by the Blue Oyster Cult, an interesting band with some interesting history, which in a future episode of the show I will be talking about. A very good band, but a very strange one in many ways too. This is the second hour of the show, and this show tonight, this second hour of the show, will be dedicated totally to the subject of female psychopathy, female psychopaths, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to start by reading a short passage from my 2012 book, Defeated Demons, and it's called In the Company of She-Wolves. Apart from personal relationships, be they romantic or family, the most common scenario which leads a person into direct personal contact with a psychopath is often in the workplace. As psychopaths constantly generate new versions of themselves, with resume featuring fake credentials, moving from job to job is very easy for them compared to a human. When the rest of us are driven by economic necessity and pressures brought about by paying bills and providing for our families, a psychopath views the workplace in the same way a hyena or other predator would see a herd of wildebeest. They will seek out to find the prey least likely to notice them and then attack. The reason for doing so is to move up the corporate ladder by emotionally and psychologically destroying potential rivals. In the case of a mainly female-dominated workplace, a female psychopath entering into a situation will go about their parasitic and manipulative games in a very different manner than a male feral psychopath would. Even if they are driven by a desire to move up the ladder, female psychopaths tend to not work alone. If the female psychopath is attractive, she will have sex with senior managers as a form of eventual blackmail. In the case of an unattractive or uneducated female psychopath, she will develop a network of proto-psychopathic hyenas around her in order to assist them in the attack. Often, this pack of easily manipulated women will be encouraged to target and attempt to destroy another female in the department for no other reason than the target may be more attractive, in a happy relationship, or just simply because she's a good worker. All at the behest of the dominant female psychopath within the social dynamic. As is the case with the male psychopath, the female psychopath always sees other humans as either potential enablers or obstacles to be removed, fully aware of the many insecurities ravaging in the psyche of women today. The female psychopath capitalizes upon these to develop her posse of proto-psychopathic females ready to do her bidding. In time, the women who assist these predators in bullying another female will be used, discarded, and often destroyed by the same female psychopath once they have served their function. And that's from my page 130 and 131 of my book, Defeat the Demons, Freedom from Consciousness Parasites in Psychopathic Society. You can get that on my first book on psychopaths puzzling people on Amazon or anywhere else if you're interested. Now, the female psychopath, this is a controversial subject because there's an unwritten rule that they don't exist, and it's nonsense, or that the vast majority, overwhelming majority, maybe 85% plus of psychopaths are all male. This is nonsense. To address the first part of this equation that there's, it's a taboo subject, one of the reasons is many of these so-called psychopath, sociopath recovery forums are run by women trying to get back at their exes. And therefore, the psychopath is always a he. I always tell people to stay away from these forums. Most of them are run by disturbed or psychotic or even psychopathic females themselves. I can think of one forum in particular where one of the moderators admitted to me that she believed she was a psychopath after reading Puzzling People, and another one of the moderators is a serial false accuser who has a history of an Israeli-trained serial false accuser, by the way, who has a history of targeting men within the activist scene and spreading lies and rumours about them, calling them psychopaths and so on. This is why I tell people to stay away from them. There's also no recovery on them. And so this is a big issue. This is a big problem. Now, I believe both of the women in this case, because of their serial accusations, are at the very least proto-psychopaths, with the one who I told you about who is a serial false accuser and has targeted men, including a guy in both the the pro-Gaza movement and also the hetero-climate, I believe she is actually full-blown, because she's a nasty, nasty piece of work. No decency about it at all, and incredibly self-righteous and manipulative. Now, there's a lot of them out there like that, and stay away from those forums, because if you're a woman, they do not have your best interests in hand. And if you're a man, especially if you show up on these forums, you're a psychopath by default. It's as simple as that. Especially if you bring up issues like child custody with your ex-wife or your ex-girlfriend, you will receive no sympathy. You'll be mauled for the simple reason that you'll be declared either a psychopath or a sociopath simply because you have a penis. Because what happens is these women are so disturbed that and homosexuals, that's basically who's running these things, they're so disturbed that they transfer the lack of, shall we say, attack and the lack of result in bringing down their ex-psychopath, quote unquote, that any man nearby becomes a compensatory target to replace them with. That's why they're very extremely dangerous places for heterosexual men dealing with women who may be psychopathic. But I don't have to tell you that. Anyone going on them will see it. Even the women will see that many of them are like that. Now, I have met them, but I've never been in a relationship with a female psychopath ever. Now, I used to think I was with a girl that I knew in my very early 20s, and she was wild. But looking back on it now, she was also very cold and very manipulative and very nasty, and treated me appallingly, particularly towards the end. And one of the reasons I look back on that now and question myself thinking that she was a psychopath was she was a heavy cocaine user. And to be honest with you, I didn't know her as not a cocaine user. So it would be wrong for me to say that she's a psychopath. She could be a perfectly decent, normal person when she wasn't on cocaine. I'm not one of these people who go around calling anyone who annoys me or pisses me off a psychopath. I have to have very good reason, and I have to follow up a person's life story and see that they've been doing this kind of behavior all their lives. Now, the female psychopath, as I said, is controversial because one of the reasons is they don't get caught. And if they do get caught, they very often will be diagnosed with something called borderline personality disorder. Now, borderline personality disorder is an interesting one because personally I don't believe it exists. I believe that it's a handy term that's used to put a tag on women to actually keep them victims. Now that's not to say that every woman who's diagnosed with borderline personality disorder is a psychopath. Of course they're not. Probably most of them are not. Many of them would be just like women who have, like, they're highly emotional, and that's okay. That's no problem with that. But the female psychopath, being so cunning, will manage to slip into that and try to make out that they're unwell women, when in reality they're vicious, cunning predators. I have no problem with the psychopath being 50-50. In fact, I have very good proof it is. Now, I would say the majority of people who contact me now, since I don't bother myself with relationship psychopaths, because I believe most of the women who actually talk about this are just, now I'm not putting down women, but I'm saying the ones in that scene are just trying to get back at their ex by calling them a psychopath or a sociopath, because it makes them feel better, because they can't stand being rejected, or they're completely codependent. But there are women who are definitely been targeted by psychopaths. I've seen horrific stories, and when you hear the real story, you know the real deal compared to someone who's just like pissed off at their ex or heartbroken. Which I don't actually, if someone's heartbroken, I don't really feel bad for them going through that stage, because a broken heart is a terrible thing. And whatever gets you through the dark night of the soul, fair enough. Once you don't, make websites saying the guy is a psychopath or anything like that, or try, do anything like that. Even if he is one, you could actually find yourself in prison for doing something like that. It's 50-50 for that reason. It's also that we live in, if you look at the violent ones, the male ones tend to be much more, shall we say, sexy. Now, when I use the term sexy, I mean in a media sense. The killings are much more, they're much more glamorous in how they're portrayed by the media. They all have names like the Night Stalker, the Son of Sam, the Yorkshire Ripper. You rarely, if ever, get that with women. You don't. Usually, when female serial killers are caught, it's usually, usually by accident. And at the time, the cops who were investigating it didn't actually know they were dealing with a female serial killer. It was usually by accident that was discovered. Now, why is it important to know about them? Well, two things. One, if you're a woman in the workplace and you encounter one of these women, one of these female psychopaths, she could destroy your life. She could easily destroy your career, but she could very much destroy your life. If you're a man and you marry one, you could be in for a hell of a rough ride when the party is over. If you have a child with one, she will use that as a bargaining chip for all eternity and rub you into the ground and tear your soul, your finances, and your sense of self asunder. Now, as with all my work, I don't go around saying call everybody a psychopath, a sociopath, a narcissist. In most cases, 99% of the people you deal with that are pain in the arse are regular assholes. Always remember that. They're regular assholes. But you could be dealing with a psychopath. And it's always a good thing to be wary without being paranoid or over-judgmental, or especially being hysterical. The female psychopath will play on the delicate flower thing to save herself. The female psychopath will be an eternal victim. Now, I'm going to mention three things that you should always bear in mind when you're dealing with the female psychopath, right? One, high testosterone levels. I know a cult out there led by a high testosterone bag filled with all these bombastic high testosterone mental cases have claimed that there's no proof for this. There's lots of proof of this. You look on the internet, there's tons of it. They didn't want to hear it because I was describing them. That doesn't mean that all women with high testosterone are psychopaths. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with a woman having high testosterone. In many cases, a woman with high testosterone can be extremely attractive and very sexy and beautiful. In a lot of cases. So it's not that, but look out for that one. Another one is cancer. If there's one thing a female psychopath absolutely is obsessed with, it's cancer. It's either faking cancer, pretending they've got cancer, or talking about people they knew who had that cancer, that they nursed them all the way through it. They love talking the big C. I don't know why. Maybe it's a projection of themselves in the sense that they are themselves a kind of a mobile cancer, shall we say, a conscious cancer. But they are, for some reason, they love the cancer. They love the big C. I don't know why. They just do. And the other one is a victim complex. Having a victim complex. Now, how does the high testosterone manifest? Doesn't mean they're butch and anything like that. It could mean in thinning hair, a lot of acne that goes into, it could mean these things. It goes into later life. And I know I got slagged off by Occult for talking about the index finger being a sign of a psychopath. That's because this crazy death cult who are getting messages from aliens on an Ouija board because they think that they're going to be eaten by reptiles or something coming in comets, just were having a go at me because that's what cults do, because they're crazy. And what I was pointing out in Defeated Demons is that one of the signs of high testosterone is the length of finger. I didn't say it was a sign of a psychopath, but of course, what cults are like. They take everything out. They'll take the punchline of a joke and try to make out it's you talking about yourself. But that's what you're dealing with, crazies. Now, so that's look out, the impulsivity, incredibly high sexual you know what they say? If she's sick in the bed, she's sick in the head. There's a lot of truth to that with the female psychopath. Things like wanting their nipples bit, wanting really nasty things done to them. That, like a nice guy just wouldn't be turned on by it. That's a big one to watch out for, and because they have, you see, sexuality is very strange to them. It's almost like a force of expression rather than a bonding between human beings, and it's aggressively pursued like a sport. That's one to And they'll also have like a lot of sexual partners, quite a lot. And if they tell you they've had like 40 sexual partners, that means they've had about 300. That's one to look for. Another one that's explained, and impulsivity. That's let's have sex behind the corner here. No, that's for that kind of thing. Now that's okay when you're a teenager. Teenagers do that, but if she's doing that kind of thing in her 40s and 30s and 40s and 50s, that's not the sign that you have a hot chick. That's a sign of the old adage, sick in the bed, sick in the head. Now, the other one too, I told you about the cancer one. They're obsessed with cancer. They love talking about cancer. They love surrounding themselves with cancer. And this also plays into another thing. So many of them are healers. They're healers. They're big into the New Age healing thing. They can heal you and all this kind of thing. That ties in with the channeling a lot. The New Age psychopaths are into the kind of channeling and the healing, that kind of thing. And the hypnotherapy and all that stuff. It's all bollocks. They're just trying to use and manipulate and target people. So watch out for that one. They're always healers. That's also to make you trust them. I can heal you. I took care of someone who had cancer. I had cancer. That kind of thing. And to make you feel, to get guys who are basically suckers, and women too in the workplace. And I said that, and the final one I said was pity plays. Oh, no matter what they've done, if they drove, now this applies to male psychopaths as well, but the female psychopaths get away with it because they're delicate flowers. So if they got drunk and drove a car into another car, and there was 5 adults in that car and an unborn baby, the female psychopath will blame the unborn baby before she would accept any responsibility for causing that accident. That's what the males do as well. But the female will say, "Oh, my husband used to beat me," that kind of thing, and this is what made me drink. Where so she'll get a more lenient prison sentence, where a guy who did that would just go right to prison. So there's the ones to look out for: the high testosterone, cancer, obsessed with cancer, and that also applies to things like I'm a healer as well, and also the pity plays. When a psychopath ages and they've had a life of perdition and they've ripped people off, they can't do it anymore, and people are starting to get wise to them and saying, she's a nasty old bitch, that one. She's used people and manipulated them all their lives. She'll suddenly develop the persona of a helpless old lady. How dare... Now, this could be the most vile and cruel and impulsive, hysterical, smear campaigning ratbag monster during our whole life. But when the tables are turned on her, the hands are never held up in the air saying, maybe I shouldn't have done that like a normal person, I'll stop it. It's immediately, I'm an old lady and you're picking on me. And so that's what they do. Another one that they do as well is they'll pretend to have illnesses too. When their looks start to go, you'll find that now I can see us all getting hysterical but saying, I have ME and I'm not a psychopath. No, I'm not. I'm saying that. They will whip out things like this. They will pretend to have a very difficult to diagnose illness like ME in order to say, so the guy won't get rid of them. You can't throw me out on the streets. I'm useless. I have ME. I'll die on the streets. That kind of thing. That's the kind of thing they do, okay? Believe me, I've been studying psychopaths for many, many years. I know what I'm talking about. It's like it's a skill that has saved my ass so many times, and it can save yours if you pay attention to these things. Now, again, this is not a fear-based thing. I'm going through practical steps. We're dealing with the psychopath in the same way that you deal with a virus or a bacteria or a biohazard. Male or female, there are specific cautionary things you do to detach yourself from them. But unfortunately, with the female psychopath, because women are supposed to be weak, but they're not weak, they're the same as men, it's just that the psychopath female will play on that they get away with it. Now, there was a nurse in Italy that recently came into the news called Daniela Poggiali, and she was 41, and she was arrested by officers in Lugo, northern Italy, after an unexpected death of a 78-year-old patient who was admitted to a hospital with a routine illness. The inquiry was then widened to 38 deaths, 10 of which were described as very suspicious. They now reckon she may have killed up to 100 people. Police started the investigation following the death of Rosa Caledoni in April 2013. This was 2014, sorry. And she was recovering from a broken femur and was admitted to the hospital feeling dizzy. Investigators say that during a post-mortem examination, doctors found high traces of potassium chloride, which vanishes after 48 hours, thus making it very hard to detect. Psychopaths learn all about drugs because they need them for things like date rape drugs and so on. They're fascinated by drugs, actually, a lot of them. It was also found in the drip investigators believed that the nurse was using. Potassium chloride can stop the heart and is one of the components used in the lethal injection given to death row inmates in the United States. The morning that Mrs. Caledoni died and Mrs. Pogliali's first day shift after she had been switched from nights by doctors, increasingly worried about the number of deaths on her watch. Alessandro Mancini, the magistrate leading the inquiry, said, "I believe she saw this change in shifts as a challenge and wanted to show how well she could kill by day as well." Very astute observation by the judge, by the magistrate. It had been claimed that Miss Pogliali took photographs of herself with dead patients, which she did indeed. She put pressure on one nurse to take photographs of her standing over a patient who's just died, which she did with her thumbs up and posted them to social network media. She appeared euphoric in the photos, next to someone she may have just killed, said Mr. Mancini. This euphoria is called the rush. This is the autoferal impulse I talk about in puzzling people. A psychopath, because they have no inner sense of being, they don't have a sort of a creative sense. Like if they achieve something creatively, they wouldn't sit back and admire it and say, you know, that really was an amazing experience. They pulled that out of me. They can't have that. What they do is they have scams. And when they pull off a scam, they have a rush, a phenomenal rush of dopamine and adrenaline. And this is what makes them euphoric. This is why when a female psychopath marries a guy and he has the ring on her and she knows that she basically owns him because they're now signed and bonded legally, she isn't just happy at the wedding. She is euphoric, jumping up and down like a giddy little girl. This is why when they move from one relationship to the next, they destroy one person's life, they're giddy. They're absolutely giddy, and everyone around them is like, what's going on? It's like that scene in The Office where, where that TV sitcom The Office, where what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name. When it happens, when he says to them, "I've got some bad news and good news." The bad news is the department's being closed down. The good news is I'm getting a promotion. Well, it's like that. The photos revealed an unbearable cruelty that I have not seen in 30 years on the job, said Mr. Mancini. Miss Pogliali allegedly targeted patients she thought were annoying and who were visited by pushy relatives. You see the mentality there? She had the means to kill them, potassium chloride. And what was the reason? The family members or the parents or the patient was annoying. So what does a psychopath do? They go from, it's just like when they're in a smear campaign mode. And this is how they always give themselves away in the smear campaign mode, is that they go from A to Z or A to Z and skip all the letters in between. So she goes from someone's annoying or pushy about her on the job, because psychopaths are often incompetent in the job, instead of saying, oh, where the rest of us would go, and turn her hex and goes, oh, I hate that bastard. They kill them. It's as simple as that. Or come home and complain to it for their spouse. They just kill them. It's just business. We believe she is sound of mind. All psychopaths are sound of mind. They know exactly what they're doing. They're not psychotic. But simply took satisfaction and real pleasure in killing, said the magistrate. Mrs. Pogliali reportedly gave sedatives to troublesome patients to avoid being disturbed. The sedatives were possibly a warm-up to her killing spree, said Mr. Mancini. In local reports, one nurse who worked with Miss Pogliali described her as a cold person but always eager to work. That's because she was deriving that adrenaline rush, that dopamine rush from killing people. Because as Ted Bundy said when he used to kill someone, It made him feel like God. This is where the euphoria comes from. Another nurse said she was worried when a relative of a manager at the hospital, a manager's disliked by Pogliali, was admitted. I had a premonition, the nurse said. See, this is what I always talk about. Intuition. The best radar of all for a psychopath and one being in our lives is intuition. You get that toxic feeling that something isn't right. You get that there's something not right here. The reason for that is there's some very good theories about it that you can kind of go to them on a spiritual level, that psychopaths are so energetically different than us that our subconscious mind is warning us of a predator nearby. And what this lady called a premonition was really her intention, saying to her, you have a feral predator in your proximity. 1 hour later, the patient was dead. So this guy was in the hospital an hour and she killed him. I turned to stone and said to myself, here we go again. Now you see, it's very hard to prosecute this one because she's a nurse. Nurses are healers. This is why a lot of them go into job as carers of the elderly, nurses, school teachers, nuns, any new age healers, because they don't like they like to create the persona of being healers, carers, and that way a nurse couldn't possibly be doing this. Police said that Mrs. Pogliali had been stealing money from patients. Yeah, that's a sideline. The money wouldn't have been that big a deal. The money, she was probably making good money as a nurse, but the money was just an extra sweetener. That was just an extra bit of dopamine and an extra bit of adrenaline. When one patient protested, she replied, you got €5 left and you won't need it. That patient died a week later, Mr. Mancini said. So that trial is ongoing now. She's up to 100 patients she may have killed. And if you look at her photographs, you can see the whole high testosterone thing in action. She's got skin like leather that's wrapped around her skull. She's got the poor hair growth. And by God, she's got what I always talk about, that smirk. That autoferal impulse that I talked about in puzzling people. That smirk has caused Duper's Delight. The one person who came up with that theory was Dr. Robert Hare of the University of British Columbia. The rush of adrenaline causes the smirk to happen and make them get away with it. It's really interesting and it's really bizarre. And this is the female psychopath. The males do it, but remember, she got away with so much more because A, she's a woman, B, she's a nurse. This is the problem with the female psychopath. And all the women who contacted me about having to deal with a female psychopath at work tell me the same thing. That this woman was more ruthless than any man in the office. But they couldn't do anything about it because no one would believe that a woman could be like that. The poor woman is fighting against the glass ceiling. She has to be tougher. She has to be harder because it's a man's world. The problem is that she's not targeting men. She's targeting the other women in the workplace. I told you we're going to get an education tonight. Look, if there's one thing that I know about, it's this. I'm not pulling it out of my backside. It's not an oracle I stare into. I have worked over 20 years very, very hard on this subject because I tried to understand an event that happened in my life as a child when a bomb went off, a loyalist bomb went off in Dublin, and I wasn't far from it that killed 30 people. And that was the moment in my life I stepped into consciousness, and I could not understand why someone, even if they weren't evil, could be so cruel and cold and do something like that. And I think that was probably a trigger that put me into this interest in life. First through, business, but also the interest in serial killers was an indirect way I was trying to find answers. And I don't take this subject lightly. I know I joke around and I laugh and I have a good time. That's because that's me in real life. If you were to hang out with me in the pub, I'm always telling jokes, having a laugh. That's me. I'm a beer and pizza, rock and roll kind of guy. But when my work, and particularly when I'm studying this, my work into studying psychopathy and the psychopathic situation and the psychopathic control grid that runs this world, I take that incredibly seriously. I cannot even begin to tell you how many documents I've read, what I've looked at, because at one point it disgusted me how there was all this information within academia and in psychiatry and in neuroscience warning us about these things, and it wasn't in the it wasn't in the public domain. The average person didn't know about it. There was lives being destroyed all over the world, including mine nearly at one point and a few points by these monsters. And this is what led me to this. Nothing else. I'm very fortunate that I didn't have that in my life growing up in a family thing, or I didn't have it in a relationship, but I had it in the workplace, and I had it in social circles that I was in. And they're out there, and we got to learn this stuff, and that's why you have all the BBC and everyone else trying to play this subject down. And again, as I'm telling about this stuff, and as you read my books, Puzzling People and Defeat the Demons, again and again I say, don't be going around calling anyone a psychopath, a sociopath for the smallest reasons. There's something you have to look into here and really, really work on it, because it's like a muscle. If you study this subject more and more as a mature adult, rather than being on a forum with a bunch of hysterical queens and drama queens calling everyone psychopaths, if you study it rationally and intelligently, it becomes like a muscle, and it serves you very, very well in life. Now, to show how dangerous psychopaths are, devious, I still get caught out today. And now and again I will get caught out, not as much as I used to, but they'll still get in there because they will play on things like the fact that I didn't have a particularly happy childhood. It was very difficult, and they'll play on that. They'll play on that and that kind of thing, or that. So I have to be careful. But as I said, they're very, very rare, and I generally spot them very, very quickly. Usually, if they slip in, it's because I haven't taken notice of them. I haven't paid them that much attention. Now, as I said, one of the markers that I look out for is also the pity thing. And there's a story here that it actually made my skin crawl. It made me sick. And it was about a woman in America called Heather Horst, who wanted out of her marriage with a U.S. Air Force airman. And she hatched a plan to get rid of him and to get the money from the insurance. And this story was reported by a guy called Andrew Stevenson. "I want him dead," Heather Horst, 25, said about her husband to her friends about her husband. They thought nothing of it, believing she was just shooting her mouth off without actually meaning it. But Heather Horst was serious, deadly serious. Aaron Allen, 26, believed Heather, so she told him more. She told him that Brandon Horst, her 25-year-old spouse, abused her, see? He had beaten her so soundly that she had 2 miscarriages, she claimed. She had found herself a sucker. That's what's going on here. Heather believed that an enabler. Heather believed that Aaron had been abused as a child, and she worked on him. You see, she thought that this guy Aaron had been abused as a child, so she pretended she was being abused in order to get him on her side. So she worked on him a little more each day. This is classic psychopath, folks. Aaron hated bullies, and his distaste for Brandon grew and grew. Heather said that Brandon had a $1 million insurance policy, and she would pay Aaron $250,000 to get rid of him. That was an exaggeration. Brandon was only insured for $500,000, but Heather could talk her way out of that later. Aaron didn't take a lot of persuading. He had fantasized about killing someone all his life. Now, this guy was clearly disordered in a different kind of way. He had often joked with his friends about how he'd get rid of the body by taking it to a pig farm, perhaps, or by burning it in lye, potash. Dysfunctional Aaron claimed to have been 5 different personalities. Put at least 2 or 3 rounds into him, Heather advised, as she dropped Aaron, she's talking about her husband now, as she dropped Aaron off outside her house in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was late in the evening of August 4, 2013. Aaron made his way silently into the house. He didn't need to break in because the lock at the back door had broken. He slipped down the basement and waited for Brandon to fall asleep. It took him longer than he thought. He spent 2 hours there, occasionally sending Heather text messages. He was worried about the dog barking, would it alert Brandon at the risk of trouble? Meanwhile, Heather had gone around to her friend's house. Angela Ponicello also happened to be Brandon's stepsister and Aaron's girlfriend. It was a close-knit community. Heather persuaded Angela to go with her to the Walgreens store so she could establish an alibi. And see that the deviousness. And there she was on the security camera for all the world to see, at the exact time that Brandon was killed. Angela thought it was a bit strange. They meandered around the store for about 20 minutes and didn't buy much. Nothing that they couldn't wait for. Sometime around midnight, Brandon fell asleep. When Aaron was confident that his soon-to-be victim wouldn't rouse, he made his way up from the basement. He drifted like a ghost through the house to the bedroom and peeked inside the door. Brandon lay asleep. Gentle, heavy breathing showed he would not soon awake. Aaron crept the final few yards to the bedside and lifted his gun to Brandon's head. He didn't need to fire 2 or 3 times. One bullet in the head through the right eye was enough. He was surprised at the mess it created. He texted a message to Heather. Done, it said, at 12:35 a.m. You see, they're also stupid. This is why people say to me, aren't psychopaths incredibly intelligent? No, they're devious and cunning, but they're stupid. This little pig, Angela Horst, goes to the Walgreens store to establish an alibi of being on camera. But she's at the same time, at the instant her husband is killed, she gets this doofus to send her a text message. Well, now, Heather said to Angela, it's time we be getting back. So she would have been filled with that rush I just talked about earlier on with the Italian nurse case. Angela looked up, surprised at a sudden decision to leave. They exited the store at 12:37. Heather drove back to pick up Aaron from the porch of the house. How many rounds did you put into him, she asked. They drove to, see, just business. The young guy shot in the head. She didn't care. They drove to Kaposia Park, where Aaron dumped the backpack containing the pistol. Welcome back to the Velocity of Now. We had another technical issue. It wasn't Gremlins this week. We're getting so many listeners are probably crashing the server, so it's a wonderful thing, but bear with us, it's a technical issue. Now, I've been talking about Heather Horst, the female psychopath who hired a guy called Aaron Allen to murder her husband, Brandon, in 2013, in Minnesota, and we got as far as the fact that he shot Brandon in the head, and then this little female psychopath pig had high testosterone as well. She's lips that are like 2 hairs. Again, that doesn't mean that every woman has high testosterone or man is a psychopath. It's just typical of psychopaths. Now, detectives knew that she hadn't immediately informed her relatives of Brandon's death, nor, unusually for a new widow, had she cried or even attended her husband's funeral. Brandon Horst was the staff sergeant in the Minnesota Air National Guard, the 133rd Security Force Squadron, and had served his country in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't only the money that had motivated Heather. She also had a lover, Marcus Strombaugh, and the two had been having an affair since before Heather had married Brandon. Marcus and Heather were devoted to one another. He couldn't understand why she had bothered to marry Brandon. She married him because she wanted his insurance money. Now the lovers wanted a new life together, but Heather wanted it on her terms. Oh, she has to have that. She was enraged when Brandon found out about their affair and said she would file for divorce. There was no way she was going to walk out empty-handed. You see, this is the whole thing. It wasn't just a marriage or a relationship that fell apart or a regular affair. This is normal. These things happen to all kinds of people. But she had planned this specifically to get his money. The Ramsey Court jury in May 2000... See, it's not like the Italian nurse. She didn't go from step A to B. She went from A to Z. I'm not going to divorce him. I'm going to kill him. The Ramsey Court jury in May 2014 heard that Heather had never been pregnant, so she lied about that and the miscarriages, and her friends testified they'd never seen any signs of abuse on her. You see, that's classic female psychopath. Ramsey County Assistant Attorney Jada Lewis said Brandon's life was cut short by his wife's greed and selfishness, and the fact that she was a vicious little psychopath. She said Heather had told friends she wanted a divorce but wasn't going to leave behind her house, her car, and her dogs. A common thing female psychopaths will do if they can't kill the guy is they will tell the fella that they're getting divorced that if you don't give me the house and the car, I will coach the kids and tell the police that you molested the daughters. That's a very common one that the female psychopath does. Heather had turned up at Aaron's apartment early in the morning of August 4th and said she'd been beaten by Brandon once more and that she had miscarried again. So this guy who shot her husband fell for the lies and the pity stories. Aaron saw red and the two of them decided they would finish this bully off that night. This stupid simpleton throwing away his life. Initially, Aaron thought he would rope in his two friends, the brothers Kodorek and Sean Keppers. He'd even spoken to other morons, had spoken to other people that he was going to do the murder. This is psychopaths meets stupidity, and a young guy is murdered. You see, it's just like a cult. You'll have like the mindless enabler grunts and the female psychopath leader. He suggested they could hold Brandon down while they slit his throat. Heather drove them to Kmart to buy black clothes and shoes, so they could be like ninjas, I guess. When the brothers realised that it was more than just talk, they sensibly backed out. Heather developed Plan B, hiding in the basement, and gave Aaron her pistol to use. Aaron wasn't so sure anymore and began to express doubts. Everything's going to be okay, Heather told him. Everybody dies at some point. And what about what he did to my baby? Can you believe this? The arch manipulator, that's the psychopath for you, Heather, had always known which strings to pull in Aaron's head. She flattered and appealed to that little part in all men that yearns to be a hero and a protector. And if you see this picture, this guy, Alan Aaron, he looks like a medical experiment. He looks like he belongs in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Ironically, Nurse Ratched, the ultimate movie's female psychopath. She actually covers all the things we've spoken about here tonight. She murdered McMurphy, and she arranged for she was responsible for the killing of Billy, and that's a film you all have to watch, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, to actually see a female psychopath in action. The arch manipulator, Heather, had always known which strings to pull in Aaron's head. She flattered and appealed to a little part in all men that yearn to be a hero and a protector. In Heather's defence, attorney Deborah Ellis took the line that Aaron had acted alone. He acted on his own, she said, not at her request, sure. Not with her encouragement. He is clever. He has manipulated people, made false claims. He is alone, committed the murder. He is a cold-blooded murderer. And she's a poor woman. She would never do anything like that. But when Aaron took the stand, he didn't look too clever. He looked more manipulated than manipulator. He took the jury through several painstaking series of events leading up to the murder. She asked me to kill him directly, flat out. Or just like that, he said. She was very persistent on me being the one to slit Brandon's throat. On me being the one to slit Brandon's throat. See that? She had already planned in her mind how to basically dissect her husband. And what was the motivating factor? To get all this money so she could run off with this other guy, and she probably would have topped him, or she probably would have dumped him at some point. He explained how Heather had worked on him about the abuse, the punches to her stomach, even that she had cancer. What did I say? They love talking that big C. They're all... Look at how many female psychopaths... I mentioned a few famous cases in my books that raised money pretending they had breast cancer or ovarian cancer, and the money was used for a boob job or liposuction or to buy themselves a new car. It's not that uncommon at all. Look, and they'll do things like shave their hair and eyebrows to pretend they're on chemo. Looking back, she could see that he had been gullible, which is very common with any man or woman who's dealt with a female psychopath. They look back on it and they realise, you see, the gaslighting and the whole thing with them moves so quickly, while they're also manipulating and playing on your emotions. On one occasion, Heather had turned up with some rope around her neck, claiming Brandon had tried to strangle her. Imagine that. Imagine the stupidity of that. In retrospect, Aaron realised that was strange. Why would you drive 10 minutes with something tied around your neck? He cried as he described the change of plan and how he put a single bullet into Brandon's head. One bullet, he said. One was too much. The jury took only 2 hours to find Heather guilty of aiding and abetting first-degree murder. Judge Salvador Rosa issued a statutory sentence of life without parole. But she doesn't care. She'll be manipulated in prison, and she has free meals, a free home, and all that kind of stuff. And, she won't care. She'll get a lesbian girlfriend in prison and whatever, and get letters from guys on the usual thing. Heather showed no emotion as the verdict was read, just business, and declined her right to speak. Just business. No, what's the problem? The scam didn't work out. Move on to the next one. I'm sure she's thinking is already planning them in prison. Brandon's mother, Brendan Horse, clutched her son's dog tags as she read the impact statement. I'm actually against impact statements being read out in court. I don't think it achieves anything other than gives the psychopath a rush. I've always been, I said, I'm puzzling people, particularly in the case of pedophile priests in Ireland here. You'd have people giving impact statements. All that was happening to them was Father Mark Pervert was reliving the rush. That's why one of the reasons I don't believe in impact statements in court. They only feed the psychopath's thrill. The mother said he had the goofiest grin and he could make you smile no matter what, she said. He always looked for the good in people, and that's why she targeted him. That's why Heather Horse targeted this guy, and always looked towards the future. See, the psychopath lives in the moment. 1 month later, Aaron Allen reached a plea deal. He admitted second-degree murder and received the maximum sentence of 40 years. It was just a sentence, said many. He had killed an innocent man. It was a just sentence, said many. He had killed an innocent man in cold blood in his bed. Others thought the sentence was too harsh. Maybe it was. Aaron was completely outfoxed by the vixen, female psychopath, they argued, and 3 lives had been ruined. Yes, because, her life hasn't been ruined. The female psychopath's life absolutely hasn't been ruined. I mean, that's the whole thing again. She's the poor woman. She ruined her own life. No, she murdered her husband. She ruined his family's life, the parents, and she ruined this moron, Aaron Allen's life. But her life isn't ruined. She's not a poor, see the extent? You see how they get away with it? Even in this case, she's a poor, unfortunate woman. After all her lies and all her manipulation, all of it. Now, female psychopaths, like male psychopaths, don't generally kill. But they'll kill if they have to. And if they develop a taste for killing, like the Italian nurse, they'll do it over and over again. As with all my work on all things to do with psychopaths, you know the mantra, no contact ever again. You don't try to seek revenge, they will destroy you. You'll find that they'll hire some guy to shoot you. You don't do that. You don't try to outfox them. You will never outfox or outwit a psychopath. You get the hell away, you stay away, lesson learned, and you move on with your life with a knowledge that you won't let another one of these types move in if you can help it. If you want to know more about this, there's a series of videos on my YouTube channel called Labyrinth of the Psychopath. They're actually very famous. They're probably near legendary at this point. And I've written 2 books on the subject, Puzzling People and Defeat the Demons. They're easy to read books where I take all the gobbledygook, word salad, psychobabble that you get in all the clinical studies and all the history of the thing, and I condense it into 2 books that help you survive, identify, and transcend the psychopaths in the street and the psychopaths in the top of society and big business and politics and everywhere else. Thanks very much for listening. Don't go around calling everyone a psychopath. Just go and live a good life and be aware, but not paranoid, and do it with maturity and not hysteria. Thanks to Neil, thanks to Paula, thanks to Anne, and all the people behind the scene, even thanks to a lot of you who crashed the server tonight because the station is getting such great numbers. I love yous all. Have a great time, and feck 'em if they can't take a joke.